Hello my sweets, it's Keisha. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today I'm teaming up with two of my favorite YouTube friends to bring you a DIY fairy garden mini-series. These ladies are both crazy talented and I'm honored to be doing this mini-series collaboration with them. The first is Sukainah, also known as Liyana, over at Terrarium Crafts. On her channel you will find hauls and uniquely amazing crafts and DIYs. And this collaboration is right up her alley, as one of her favorite things to do is fairy gardens. I can't wait to see what she comes up with. Next is Kerri over at Mama Dares to DIY, and her channel is chock full of absolutely astonishing DIYs. Her attention to detail is unmatched. No stranger to the miniatures, I'm super excited to see what she has brought to the table. When you're done watching my video, check out the link to the playlist in the description box below. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. Alright, let's get to it! I'll be showing you how I made these cute fairy accessories using supplies I had on hand. To begin, I took two of these wood stems from Dollar Tree and sawed them in half. Please use safety first if you decide to duplicate this project. I sawed them in half because I felt they were too thick the way they came. This step is optional if you like their natural thickness. Next, I used my sanding block to smooth out the jagged edges. I only sanded 3 for this project. Taking this floral wire, I will create the legs for the chairs and connect them to the 2 smaller wood stems. I cut 4 pieces of the wire at 2 inches each. Please note, you will need to cut 8 2-inch pieces for 2 chairs. Next, taking needle nose pliers, I bent the wire 90 degrees, a 1/4 inch from the end. And I did this for all 4 pieces. Next, to make fancy feet, I curled the other end of the wire using needle nose pliers. This is how they should look. After curling all 4, it's time to attach the legs. I suggest using a strong adhesive for a permanent hold and hot glue for an immediate hold. After attaching all of the legs, I set the chairs aside to give the glue time to set up. Next, I take a piece of air dry clay to make a slightly bigger top for the table. I rolled it out to my desired thickness, then used a lid from a container to get the size I needed. I used this piercing tool from Dollar Tree to cut out the tabletop. Then I smoothed the edges and set it aside to dry. To make the legs for the table, I cut 4 3-inch pieces of floral wire. Next, taking needle nose pliers, I bent the wire 90 degrees 1 inch from the end. And I did this for all 4 pieces. Then I curled the wire under at the end of the 1-inch bend. I curled the other end up to make fancy feet to match the chairs. Next, taking a combination of strong adhesive and hot glue, I attached the legs to the remaining wood stem, and then set them aside to dry. At this point, the glue on the chairs had set up just enough for me to make and attach the backs. I cut a 6-inch piece of floral wire and then bent it into a V at 3 inches using my needle nose pliers. Then taking a paintbrush, I used it to bend the wire to make the top of the heart shape. To attach the back, I marked the 2 points where the back would connect to the seat. Then I used my drill to make holes about halfway into the seat. Using a little hot glue on the ends, I attached the back to the seat and then molded the chair back to my desired shape. Next, I decided to make a cake stand. I took a small amount of clay and rolled it out. Then used a soda cap to get close to the size I wanted. It was a little big, so I cut the clay just inside the impression the cap made. Once the piece of clay was freed, I smoothed the edges and set it aside. To make the base of the cake stand, I used about a pea-sized piece of clay and formed it into a cone shape. Then I flattened the top. To attach the base of the cake stand to the top, I'm going to use wood glue. I used the piercing tool to rough up the clay a little bit in the center of the top and on the base where it will meet the top. Then I apply a little glue to both sides, put them together, and then set it aside to dry. If that isn't the cutest. Every cake stand needs a cake. So that's what I made next, using a piece of clay about the size of a mini marshmallow. And I actually shaped it to look like a mini marshmallow. Once I got it shaped how I liked, I moved on to the icing. I used another small piece of clay and rolled it out kinda thin. I did this to make it easier to mold it around the cake. Then I used the soda cap again to get the size I wanted. Once I cut the circle out, I smoothed the edges. Then I draped the icing over the cake and worked it down to look like ruffles around the cake. When I was happy with the way it looked, I set it aside to dry. Next, I took this wooden snowflake sticker from Dollar Tree and cut off the edges. I'm going to use 2 of them as the base of the bird bath. After I cut them, I sanded the edges smooth. Then I applied wood glue and stuck them together offset. Working up the bird bath, I started building the stand. I used a small piece of clay to be at the bottom of the stand. I shaped it into a cone and flattened the top. Then I took a toothpick and poked it up through the middle of the cone. After that, I applied a small amount of wood glue to the top and bottom of the cone and set it aside for the glue to dry. I began to make the basin for the bird bath while the glue was drying. I rolled out a medium-sized piece of clay. Then I covered this cup with foil to use it as a mold for the basin. I draped the clay over the bottom of the cup and cut off the excess. Then I began shaping and molding the clay to my desired shape and size. When that was achieved, I set it aside to dry. To finish the stand, I added 5 pearls from Dollar Tree to the toothpick. Then I used another piece of clay to make a cone slightly bigger than the bottom one. Then I poked the toothpick through the middle of the cone and set it aside for the clay to completely dry. While waiting for the clay to dry, I decided to put together some potted plants. Using these 3 paints, I'm going to give the pots a weathered, mossy look. First, I dry brushed Waverly chalk paint in Cashew over the pots. Then I came in with Craftsmart acrylic paint in Campground, and using the same brush, I randomly dabbed it on. Immediately following, I dabbed on sage green paint. I did this for both pots and allowed them to dry. To fill my pots, I'm using these buds from a eucalyptus pick and the yellow flowers from this Greenery Bouquet. First, I put some leftover pieces of floral foam down in the pots. Next, I clipped some of the eucalyptus buds to go around the perimeter of the pots. When I got halfway around the pot, I used a piece of the yellow flower in the middle of the arrangement. Then I filled in the rest of the pot with the eucalyptus buds. I completed the second pot in the same way and set them aside. Now that the clay is dried, I sand the tabletop, cake stand, and cake with my sanding sponge. Using a combination of wood glue and hot glue, I attached the tabletop to the base. I painted the cake stand with Waverly chalk paint in white. I used Waverly chalk paint in Maize for the bottom of the cake and Ballet slipper for the icing. I used the Cashew chalk paint for the tabletop. Here I am sanding the basin for the bird bath and the stand to prepare them to be glued together. I used wood glue and hot glue to attach the clay cone to the toothpick. Then I used wood glue to attach the stand to the bottom of the basin and allowed those to dry. Once dried, I attached the wood base to the stand with wood glue. The tabletop was a little plain for me, so I covered the bottom and used some gold spray paint I made last year. To make the spray paint, I used a small spray bottle from Dollar Tree and mixed some gold paint with rubbing alcohol. Shake well before using. You can use this recipe to make any color spray paint you desire. To embellish the cake, I'm using 2 of these fingernail jewels I purchased from Dollar Tree. I glued them back to back with a strong adhesive and then glued it onto the cake. Next, I glued the cake to the cake stand. To paint the bird bath, I'm using Waverly chalk paint in Ivory. I did 2 coats, allowing it to dry between coats, and set it aside to dry. Once dried, I did the same technique to weather it as I did for the clay pots. First, dry brushing with Cashew chalk paint, then dabbing on Campground and sage green. Stay tuned to see how adorable all of these accessories turned out. Don't forget to check the link to the playlist in the description box below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and leave me a comment below. If you'd like to see more, subscribe to my channel and select all notifications so you don't miss my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, love, inspire, create. See you next time.